Boom.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Be Fearless, your weekly live podcast for G.S.T, Global Speakers
Welcome
Talk.
to this week's episode of Be Fearless,
sorry, I've got
your
myself
weekly live
coming back at me,
podcast
so
for
I'm just going to
G.S.T,
close that
Global
down.
Speakers.
Apologies.
Welcome to this week's episode of Be Fearless.
Sorry, I've got it coming at me all over the place. So yes, today we are coming to you I'm coming to you from the UK. Apologies for it being a bit late today. We've had a few technical issues, and also we've had a quick change of guest this morning. We have got sorry, I got distracted. I apologize. Shall we just rewind and start again? Oh, no, we're live. Okay, right. So welcome, everybody, to Be Fearless. And today we've got with us Jann Weeratunga, who is an author and a good friend of mine for many years. We're going to talk to Jann shortly, but first I'm going to tell you that that Dr. Jordan, who is supposed to be with us today, is going to be joining us on Tuesday next week at 2 p.m. Sorry for the change in schedule, but I am very excited that Jann has been able to step in today. We were going to do one later in the week, but we've brought that forward and she's ready for us now. It looks like she's in the lovely countryside out there in South Africa. Good morning, Jann.
Morning, Lisa. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. I'm very well. I could say good morning to you because I know it is morning, whereas normally I will welcome everybody and I will say, as I will now, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world watching this. And if you are watching the replay, please put #replay. And without further ado, I just want to tell you that I am your host for Global Speakers Talk podcast, Be Fearless, and I am Lisa Marie. I'm a primary school teacher for 25 years, but now I support parents with helping their children at home with their home learning and their schooling. I am also an illustrator and an artist, and I am working with a children's author to produce a series of books for reluctant readers and early readers who are and it is a fun interactive series, and a book comes out every month, and we just released it last month, so our first book has gone on sale. And the reason I'm telling you this little bit of extra stuff about me this morning is because here sitting in front of me is my partner in crime, the author I speak of, who I've illustrated with on this series, and we are very excited that our first book was in Amazon, and we're looking forward to launching another one very, very soon. So without further ado, I want us to move on to Jann and find out a little bit about her. As I said, she is an author. She's not only an author of children's books, she's an author of adult as well. She is living in South Africa, and she is an award-winning best-selling author. And she has mostly known for her Paralympic series, Polly's Paralympics, which was inspired by the 2012 Olympic Games. And maybe she can tell you a little bit more about what she does to help people, because within her book, she has some themes running through, which and she works with schools, etc. And I'd love for her to tell you a little bit more about how she helps people and what she does. So over to you, Jann.
Hi, everyone, and I'm glad to be joining you today. As you can see, I'm actually outside. Slight reason for that, we have load shedding, which means power cuts every 2 hours. So my home is currently in one of those, so I've driven up the hill and I'm chatting to Lisa from, well, a park up somewhere in Johannesburg. So there we go. So apologies for the noise and the wind. But I'm Jann Weeratunga. I'm an author. I've written approximately 40 books, just a little bit over that now, 30 of which are for children and 10 of which are for adults, including poetry and short stories. The books I write usually based around anti-bullying, integration. So very, very inclusive books. I write a lot with disabled characters and also multicultural, because I feel those are very, very important areas that we should be looking at in the world and everybody should see as normal. So that's me in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Jann. And that you say that's you in a nutshell, but there's so much more to learn about Jann. And hopefully you'll be able to go into her links and find out some more. Jann and I met about 17 years ago. So we've known each other a long time. And she is a very, very talented lady, hence why I've chosen to team up with her. And I'm very excited you're here today, because we are going to talk about being fearless and being more brave in our day-to-day lives. So I've got a few questions I'd like to dive in, if that's okay with you, Jann.
Yep, go ahead.
So I would like to ask you if there has been a time or a situation in your life when you have felt fear, and it may have prevented you or not from doing something that you wanted to do or wish, or that you really had to do.
Okay, I think that actually connects with my writing. I actually wrote my first book. It's 10 years ago now, actually. It's quite a long time ago. And it came about basically because I was watching the closing ceremony of the UK Paralympics in 2012. And after a speech, I sort of said to my friend, you know what? Those books need to be written. You know, there are no books out there for children where there are lots of disabled characters. And I wrote my first book, which was Polly's Paralympics, and it's all about pirates that hold their own Paralympic Games. And then I did nothing. And I did nothing for 5 years because I was too frightened. I was frightened of failure. I was frightened of what my peers might think of me. I just did nothing. It sat on my computer, and there it sat for 5 years.
And that's interesting, because what happened then, Jann, is that, you know, it didn't stay that way, did it? There came a point where you decided, why have I let this fear stop me and hold me back? So can you tell us what actions you then took to move forward, and how did that change from being a fear to you becoming more fearless and working through that fear?
Okay, well, basically what happened was the same friend that had jogged me to write the books in the first place turned around and said, look, the Olympics are around the corner again and you've done nothing. So come on. And it was the jog I needed. And then I decided, okay. And then another friend said to me, look, you know, so-and-so said you were writing a book, and have you been to Scoobs? And Scoobs was a huge bookshop, which unfortunately closed during COVID. But it was a very, very big bookshop that we have here in Johannesburg. And they said, go and ask for this lady. And it was a lady called Deborah Deploy. And I've always known her as Deb. I always call her Debs. And she was fantastic. I went to her, I showed her my book, and she said to me, cover's rubbish, story looks good. Yes, you can launch here. And within 2 months, I had to get a new cover. I had to get it edited. And it was what I needed. It was that little push just to get me going. And really, after I got going, there was no stopping me, I suppose, as one could say, because literally in the last 5 years, I've written 40 books. So sometimes we need someone else just around us, just to nudge us forward, or we need to know where to find those people. And so from that, I actually started a group which met monthly, and I invited people in the trade to come in and give talks so that other people that were just as frightened as I had been, and I still was, because I basically knew almost nothing. Well, no, I didn't. I knew nothing about the industry, and I had to learn, and it was a very steep learning curve. And I realized there were lots of other people around me that were in exactly that same situation. So we started a meeting once a month at Scoobs. Authors and illustrators and publicists and publishers and cover designers and all sorts of people came in and would give a talk. And I made sure it was free so everybody could enjoy it and gain from it, because money in South Africa can be difficult for some authors, especially if they're trying to write full time. And then we started a group online, a Facebook group called Indie Authors Networking, and there's just under 2,000 of us, I think, on there now. And again, people can put their books up there. They can ask questions. And there's always somebody who will pop in and help or answer a question. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we'll put those links to that group as well if anyone wants to join in the comments at the end, where everyone can contact you and join that group. What I'm hearing from you, Jann, and it's a thread that's been quite common with people that I've spoken to, is how important people around you are. So people around you were the catalyst in a way for you to start pushing through that fear. They gave you some bravery, I suppose, some impetus and some confidence building to believe that you should at least try and push forward with your fear. And also the other thing I'm getting as well is that it doesn't happen alone, because they could have done that and you'd have said, no, I can't, for whatever reason, and continue as you were. But you obviously did some work on yourself and spoke to yourself. Did you find that every time, how did you feel every time something came up where you felt fearful, and that fear of the imposter, who am I to be writing this book? Is anyone going to like it? All of those things that you feel as an author. And everyone feels them, they're very natural. What did you say to yourself, do you think, that kept you going? And did you go and ask your friends as well to continue helping you with that support of, helping you to feel that you could do it?
Okay. Well, I actually think it sort of moved away at that stage, away from my friends and more to my actual readers. And it was the children I was actually writing for. I'd go into a school. I used to get invited into lots of schools just prior to COVID, and that's now starting up again. And I'd been into a couple of schools, and I left some books there for their library as well. And they invited me back about a month later. And I think for me, it was one little girl, and I actually never found out what her name was. And she had this beautiful prosthetic leg, and it had purple butterflies and flowers on it. And she came running over to me, literally sprinting over to me, threw her arms around me, and she said, Auntie, thank you so much for writing those books for me. And I realized, I think at that moment, that was the moment for me when I realized you're writing not just for all children, which of course I am writing for all children, but especially these children that have some form of disability, because there are not enough books out for those children. And she connected with that book. And her friend who came up to me, who was totally able-bodied, said, Auntie, I'm number 20 for your book. Oh, sorry, she said, I'm number 20. And I thought, number 20? What's number 20? So I asked her. And she said, I'm number 20 in line for your book. And I'd actually given 5 books into the school. And this was a month later. And she was number 20 on the list. So she'd actually put her name down on the list. And I think what that did for me, it made me realize that, and it made me overcome a fear, because it made me realize there were people out there, there were children out there that actually wanted to read my books, that wanted to hear the words I had to say or I had to write. And it was those 2 children, but especially the first little girl, that actually prompted me to carry on writing. And from that, I went to the next Polly book and the next Polly book. Polly's now on number 10, Tukani's on number 3, where I've actually written 8 of our books, by the way, so you've got some catching up to do on the illustrations, because we've only got number 2 going out, but we're going out one a month with those. So I'm on book 3 with the Yoga Ninis. So yeah, and I've got lots of other standalones that are mixed in there as well. So it's when you suddenly realize there are people out there that want to listen. And I think that is when, especially as an author, and I think probably the same can be said to musicians or actors or other people that are in this sort of profession, where they suddenly realize there are people that want to either see or hear you or read what you've written, So I think it was that little girl that changed everything for me personally.
Well, I can imagine. I can see why. It's almost like you would have probably felt, I certainly did listening to your story, that even if it was just writing for that one child, it was worth it, even if she was the only person that ever read. You know, it's I think that's such a powerful thing to be able to get out there and see that you've helped people. And certainly a lot of people that I've spoken to here on the Be Fearless podcast, I think that gives everybody that I've spoken to that confidence and that strength and power to keep going forward for those that really need it, because you know there's always going to be people that need to hear what you have to say or what you are offering to help. And that's a really powerful story. Thanks for sharing that, Jann. It's very emotional, actually. It's lovely to think that children can relate to these characters in your book so well, and that's what makes them so special, that children can see themselves in the characters and understand the scenarios and events and put themselves in those places and let their imagination soar. So that was great in answering my question about, you know, what really kept you going through the fear. Do you think you still have some well, okay, I'm gonna rephrase that question because I know you too well, Jann. What are your current fears that you're working on overcoming, and what steps are you currently taking to work on this? Because let's face it, we've all got fears. It wouldn't be normal if we didn't.
Yeah. I think I'm still afraid of failure. Even 40 books down the line, I think, you know, you're only as good as your last book. So in that sense, I still have that fear. For me, a lot of my fears are around technology, which you helped me with immensely, because I'm scared stiff of technology. It really is something that I'm not very good at. Not because I don't try, I do try. And sometimes I spend hours and hours and hours trying, and then I get to the point where I just want to throw my computer out the window because I've just tried and tried, and I just can't go any further.
We're the wrong generation, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm the last of the baby boomers, I think, and you know, I've learned telephones, and I can Zoom, and I can Teams, and I can use a computer to do most of what I want, but there's a lot of things I still can't do, and those are the fears which they hold you back. They actually stop you moving forward, in the sense that when you know you can't do something, you get to a point where you stop trying, and I think that's where, for example, you've been so wonderful, because you go, oh no, but that's easy, we can sort that out. And no, you just have to. I mean, even to today, I'm setting up this podcast as I'm sort of driving along and parking, and I'm going, which buttons do I have to press? What do I have to put in there? You know, and it's that last little minute of sort of panic, because I didn't have a lot of time to do that, because obviously the power was going off quickly, and I had to find somewhere where there would at least be like 3 towers. I'd get one of them working for me. And also the fact that I'm afraid of technology. I'm scared of it. I don't like it. For me, it's a necessary evil, because it's the medium through which my books get out to the world. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big learning curve, isn't it? When you've got something that you've not been used to. I mean, we're not in the generation where we use technology. I mean, that I still did a typewriting exam for my GCSE, so I didn't, you know, we weren't the computer people. So everything's had to be learned, and obviously, you know, it takes longer for us than if we've grown up with it. And it's definitely, there's definitely a time issue where things will take us longer to learn. But what I love about being a lifelong learner, as I know you are, is that there's always a way. You know, we can always find something that can tell us how to do it, or someone that knows how to do it who can help us. And you know, this is the answer to fears. It's about reaching out to people. And I feel that there's going to be a lot of people reaching out to you, even, Jann, after this. Any coaches who probably they're probably screaming at the screen saying, I want to help her, I want to work with her, I don't want her to feel imposter syndrome anymore, you know, because you certainly deserve to not feel that. You've had a great career in writing, and long may it continue. And I would like to ask you now your fourth question, which is, can you imagine the transformation in your life if you could say, every time you feel that fear, if you could say, right, I'm not listening to you, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, and I am moving forward because there will be a way. Can you imagine if you had so much less fear in your life and you lived life even more fearlessly than you do now? What would that feel like, do you think?
Oh,
What could you achieve, maybe?
I think I would have done a lot of things in my life much earlier.
Mm.
I wouldn't have been. I had an English teacher, for example, who basically told me I was useless. Always told me I was useless, and I think that blocked me writing maybe 30 years earlier than I did. So I've started writing quite late. And I think if I'd started 30 years ago, oh my goodness, where would I be now? I mean, you know, I've achieved 40 books in 5 years. I'd be up there with Barbara Cartland, you know, I'd have hundreds of them out there. Hopefully some good ones as well. Who knows? Maybe my books would have been made into movies by now, or children's TV series, or, you know, all those things would have been. I'm not saying I'm not going to get there, because I do believe that if the right person is watching, I will still get there, because I do believe very much in my books. I think they are the ideal for going on to either movies or children's series. And I've had so many people actually say to me, but why hasn't this been made into a TV program? Or why haven't they made a movie from that? Well, it's just because the right person hasn't discovered me. Or maybe I'm still holding back and I have a little bit of fear to actually knock on those doors and say, hey, you know, or I don't know how to knock on those doors. So it's not the matter I won't knock on, because I would knock on the doors, I think, if I knew how to. And that's a lot of it is, you know, how do you prepare a script to go to Netflix or G.S.T or the BBC or whoever it is around the world that you're trying to get your books seen by, to create that movie or that TV series? How do you find that agent? Because that's not easy. I live in South Africa, and we don't have any agents down here. Don't exist. All right. So it's always sheer luck if anybody finds anybody down here. And then when you live sort of on the other side of the planet, it's hard for people then, maybe in my home country, which obviously is the UK, you can hear that from my accent, to then say, well, we would be your agent because I'm living so far away from them. So maybe they you know, that's a constraint. So yeah, so I think I like to think at least that I would be a very different person to who I am now. I like to think I'd be a lot more confident in areas that I still hold back in. And I like to think I'd be up there with Rowling.
You would
J.K.
be,
Rowling.
because if
I
you
would be
said,
there.
yeah, if you said, oh, I don't know how to find an agent. Well, yes, I do. I'm going to find a way to find an agent. You know, it's just about turning it around, isn't it? And that's where you are now, because, you know, we're steaming away with this new book series, and we've still got, you know, all your back catalogue of amazing books in the series as well. And now is the time to be the most fearless you've been and just go for it. So that transformation, when I think about what my transformation would look like, it definitely drives me to say, you know, don't worry, Lise, you got this. You can do this. Nothing's impossible. Nothing's not been done before, and nothing's impossible. It's only you. The only limitations are yourself. And I think that's a great message that you're bringing today to everybody, is basically, let's not let ourselves be limited by ourselves, because that's the only limitations that we have, isn't it? We're just all in our mind. They're all, you know, and they're not helpful. And we just need to try and throw caution to the wind as best we can and be brave and move forward. So if I were to say to you that I knew someone who was allowing fear to prevent them from bringing out that book, and that they've been sitting on it for 10 years and it's up in the attic, and they're not following their dreams. They have dreams of being a best-selling author. They have dreams of even just publishing their book and seeing their name on it. Because I tell you what, for me, these arrived this week, and just seeing, oh, you can't see it because it's blurry, but just seeing our names at the bottom of that, I felt like I was the luckiest woman alive. So go back to that feeling. And what would you say to those people in that position that want that dream?
Okay, well, the first thing I would say is just write. Even if you just write for yourself, or you just write to read to your dog or your cat or your children or your husband or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or who, it doesn't matter, or your wife. It doesn't matter who you write for. Number one, write. And don't let barriers stop you. So you might say, yes, but I'm dyslexic. So computers can overcome that. They can make an amazing difference. You can even speak your story into a computer and it will type it for you. You know, so things like Word do that for you today. So always write. Then the second thing I would say to them is start looking around on places like Facebook, which is really, really good for lots of different platforms, where you can look up the word author, for example, or writer, and there will be a plethora of groups there that you can join, and then be brave enough to start asking questions. Start asking for help. People ask me for help every day. And I'm lucky enough to be able to say now, 5 going on 6 years down the line from actually publishing my first book, that I know a little bit more than I did then, and I can help some people, and I can actually help them get started. But there are lots of people out there that can do this for you. They actually are more than happy to come on and answer a question on Facebook. So don't hold back in that sense. You know, get your writing out there. Get people's help. They will tell you where you can find an editor, an illustrator. I know a very good one. She's sitting on the other end of this phone right this minute. A cover designer, a proofreader, a printer, you know, all of those things. And then, you know, when you decide, well, do I go down the indie road? And a lot of people think you need to be traditionally published. You don't. You can spend years waiting for a traditional publisher to come on board with you. Forget all of that, because at the end of the day, you've still got to do 90% of the work and you get a quarter of the money. Do it yourself. Become an independent author. Be brave. Take that step. Then you control your own fate. You control how you market your books, where you market your books, and who you can give books away to. If I want to give 10 books away free to somebody, I can do that. If I'm traditionally published, I can't. So if you want to go into a school and leave a book behind for the school, you can do that. So take that leap. And also know that your books are good. The one piece of advice I would say is don't go to family, because they'll always tell you it's good. Okay, go to an editor. So you do need to find a little bit of money to get to an editor, but there are 2 programs that I'm going to tell you about. One's called Grammarly, one's called, and it's gone right out of my head. Of course it has, because I'm now trying to remember it. Oh my goodness. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But basically, Grammarly is the main one. And if you go onto that, and you can look up other programs, and a lot of them are free to use, they will pick up huge amounts of silly mistakes, silly spelling errors, silly punctuation errors. That mean that when you get it to an editor, now my editors don't charge me very much because they know I've already done this process. And they say, yeah, but there's hardly anything to pick up really. So then they go through it. So always make sure you take those steps so you're producing the very best book, piece of writing, story that you can. And then go to Amazon, put it up there. Don't be afraid. Put it up there, even if it's just for you, because then the day it goes up, you are a published author. And Lisa, congratulations, because you are a published illustrator.
Yeah, I know. It's so cool. But this is it, isn't it? It immediately elevates your status in a way. A lot of people, haven't met an author. I know it's more common now. It's never been easier to self-publish a book than it is now. So, there are a lot of people doing it. However, when I think back to a few years ago, how many authors did I know? You, basically, you don't come across them. And yet when you find out someone's an author, you immediately like, oh, they must, especially if they've written a book, wow, they must know their stuff. And it definitely makes a difference. So be fearless, people, and do it. If being an author is what you want, or bringing out a book, or even being an illustrator. And again, with traditional publishers, Jann, the other problem is you can't choose your illustrator. So
no, you can't. And I like working
with my
illustrators, so I don't particularly want to go down that road. But the other thing, I just want to say one last thing on that is, when you get your first book sent to your house that's been printed, and it's not just the first book, it's actually every single book that you actually see in print that you produced. But that very first one, I don't know about you guys, but the first thing I do when I get a new book, whether it's mine or somebody else's, I pick it up, I flick the pages and I smell it. There's something about it. But that feeling of excitement when that box is sitting in front of you and that's your book, that is nothing, well, maybe giving birth to a baby or getting married might equal it. But basically, there is nothing in this world that just can equate to that, I'm telling you. And I think it carries over. I mean, that's me because I'm an author, but I think it carries over into so many other things as well. When you go and you start that first new job, or you start any new job, that first day, that little bit of butterflies that you have in your stomach as you walk in through the front door, or you sign on for the first time, because of course a lot of people are working remotely now. It's just that sense of excitement, that heightened excitement that you actually feel, and there's nothing like it in the world. And if you aren't fearless, and if you aren't brave enough to do it, you'll never get that feeling. You'll never know what it feels like. So just be brave. Take that step.
That's amazing advice, Jann, and I should certainly imagine that as well. That feeling is what helps to drive you to write the next one and the next one. So that helps as well, I'm sure. That amazing feeling. So thank you for sharing that with our audience. Well, I have to say, I've loved this morning's conversation, and I wish we could carry on and talk. Maybe we'll have you on another time and see what's happening. But for us today, that is all we've got time for. So I want to thank everybody who joined us today on Be Fearless. And I just want to drop in that, Jann, I do believe there's another book.
Yes.
About to launch very soon.
Yes. We launched Bluebeard's new ship a month ago. Can't believe it's a month. And it actually became a bestseller virtually overnight. And we were #1 in several categories as bestseller for over 3 weeks. And we've got another one coming out. It should be out Thursday. And that's called Red Hair's Snot Cannonballs. And yes, you heard correctly, snot cannonballs. So you can just imagine what that one's about.
I had a lot of fun drawing that one. Anyway, thank you, boys, and thank you so much. I nearly said boys and girls. I went into teaching. I forgot what I was. Thank you for joining us today and being part of this Be Fearless. And we hope that you join us again next week, when we will have Dr. Jordan here with us at 2 p.m. All that's left to say is, Jann, I appreciate you for coming in and sharing all that wonderful wisdom with us. We've learned so much, and I hope you'll come back again.
I will. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll say bye-bye until next time. Take care.
Bye.